This is an example of how to find the average rate of change over a certain interval on a function. Now, you may be looking at this like, I have no idea what the heck this question is asking, but if you have taken Algebra 1 and you are somewhat familiar with graphs, especially lines, then you actually will be familiar with some concepts in the work that I do on this problem. If you have learned anything about graphing lines, you may have heard of slope, and you may have heard of slope as described as the rate of change between 2 points. This is a similar concept. In this problem, however, I don't have a line, I have a parabola. This is a quadratic. Now, the reason it's an average rate of change is because you are not moving at the same rate between every single point. I will demonstrate that at the end with a visual, but for now I will show you how to actually find the average rate of change on this interval. Now, this interval gives you some very important information. This interval is giving you two different x values, -4 and +1. We are going to use those x values to figure out 2 points. Now, like I just said, rate of change is associated with slope. So, even though this is an average rate of change, we will still be using the slope formula. But in order to find slope between 2 points, you need 2 points, and I don't have those 2 points yet. So I'm going to take my first x value, which is -4, and I'm going to plug it into my function. This notation is saying I'm going to replace every single x with -4. And I think something important to keep in mind when you're plugging something in is to keep it in parentheses, especially if it has a negative sign. So here, I've got this -x² in the front. The negative has absolutely no association with the exponent. So when I plug in -4, that negative is going to be outside of the parentheses. And now, according to our order of operations, I must start with exponents. And right here, I have -4². Notice I did not cancel out the negatives in front of that 4. That would be considered multiplication. That is not the correct order of operations. Starting with the exponents means I'm just finding -4². That negative out front is just kind of hanging out there, and I'm going to bring it down with me. It does not go away. So -4² is +16. However, like I just said, that negative sign has to come with it. And now I can continue with multiplication. So I'm going to do -2 times -4. And then I can simplify from there, from left to right, and that gives me -5. So I plugged in -4. My input was -4. That's x. What I got out of it was -5. My output is -5. Output is y. So I have a point. That means on this parabola, there is a point at -4, -5. I'm going to do the same thing with the other x value on my interval, which is 1. And then again, be careful in the beginning. That negative has nothing to do with the 1 with the exponent attached to it. The 2 is only going to the 1 inside. So whatever's in parentheses is being squared, which means the negative does not go away. 1² is just 1. And then from there, I can multiply. So this is just -1 minus 2 plus 3, which gives me 0. So again, my input was 1, so x is 1. My output was 0, so y is 0. So now I have 2 points on the parabola. Remember what we're finding here is the average rate of change. We associate rate of change with slope. So I'm going to find the slope between these 2 points. Remember with slope, your formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then you just plug in your numbers. Remember, negative and negative cancels. So I'm actually adding in both the numerator and the denominator. And I get 1, which is my final answer. So if you are still a little confused, I'm going to show you what I just did with a graph. Now remember, it said to find the average rate of change on the interval from -4 to +1. I just drew lines on the x values of -4 and +1. We are finding the rate of change. So how much is this graph changing between these two lines? Now hopefully these points look familiar because I just found them. Plugged in -4, got out -5, plugged in 1, got out 0. What we just did in the end was find the slope between these 2 points, which ended up just being 1. But on average, between -4 and 1, the rate of change is +1.